Now that we have built out our organizational cultures using values, rituals, and routines and artifacts and ensured that that culture had been infused in all of our communication, let's say that we'd like to discover information to make sure that we're on the same page, that we're on the right track with what we had implemented in our communication. Now, we can go about that in a few different ways. We can do that in a formative process or an informal process. But no matter what way we're going about it, we're actually engaging in research. So Broom and Dozier offers a really helpful definition of research by suggesting that it's the controlled, objective, and systematic gathering of information for the purpose of describing and understanding. So just to differentiate a few different types of categories, I know that there are multiple research methods, classes, and concepts introduced in this program, but just as a brief reminder, formal research is randomized and replicable. So for me, I think about, is every member of the population about to be able to be asked? So does every member of that population have an opportunity to participate? Are we targeting every member? If so, then we can suggest that the research is replicable. However, informal research can be helpful if I just like to get a sense as to what some of the values that I had thought were part of the organization are also in the hearts and minds of some of my colleagues. So I might have a brief conversation with a colleague to talk about inclusivity, and if that colleague had found inclusivity to be part of the organizational values. If so, then I've just confirmed my suspicion. That's an informal research endeavor. We also have a difference between formative and evaluative research. So formative research is an attempt to discover more information. So if I'm thinking about what might help an organization come up with ways to promote inclusivity as a value, and I'm trying to discover what had been done in the past or some attitudes about what I could move forward with in the future, then that could be formative. Evaluative, I had a campaign in mind. I tried to come up with a certain percent increase or a certain number of people agreeing with the value. Now I'm measuring my work against an objective. So very briefly, let's talk about my favorite baseball team. Being a Western Pennsylvanian, I do follow the very futile Pittsburgh Pirates. Now, it's interesting because despite such a poor record, usually the Pirates finish under 500, we still see a pretty decent attendance rate. So I might be curious, what compels fans to attend games played by a consistently sub 500 team? When I pose that question, I'm posing a formative research question. Hopefully, with the information that I gather from this, I can suggest that we build a campaign based on fireworks display. Or maybe because it's such a beautiful place to watch a ball game, we can promote the scenery. Now, I can use that in a campaign that hopefully can see some type of attendance uptick. So, if I did launch a campaign that meant to see a 10% attendance hike, and I'm trying to determine, did the campaign lead to an increase in 10%? Then I'm engaging in evaluative research. Okay? A very popular tool that has been used by organizations, and I imagine some of you have described these as well, would be surveys. We have SurveyMonkey. Google has its own platform for survey research as well. A few tips to keep in mind. Always be transparent with the audience about the purpose of the survey and how it supports either student learning or supports the objective of your organization. Often, it's recommended to start with foundational questions first. So we call this a funnel interview. It just establishes a relationship to the organization in a broad sense before moving into more specific questions. And finally, if multiple choice surveys are issued, always include an other to welcome alternative responses. Sometimes we find our responses sort of geared, or some people might perceive them as loaded responses. To remedy that, offer an other tip, an other selection. So keeping in mind some of these very basic research tips and opportunities, please move forward in reading and answering the second case study. So case study 2 is research as a foundation. As you did with the previous case study, there will be a short text and a couple of sample questions for you to respond to thoughtfully. Please make sure that you respond to those questions before moving on to the next discussion.